everyone, Jason Humphreys here, Humps Landscape. Today's question is tips on how I design my garden layout. Every yard's different, so just a generic question like that I can't answer because I have questions that I need to know. How much sunlight do you have? How many trees do you have? Do you have access to water? What zone are you in? In the upstate of South Carolina, we're a zone 7B, and there's actually some plants, 7As, that don't do well when we have a deep winter. So 7B is a good, safe plant for this region. And sunlight, is it, what type of light do I have there morning, noon, and evening? It changes all day long. Do I have afternoon sun, morning sun, no sun? A very, very different selection of plants that you can choose if it's shade. If it's sun, you have a lot of options. But if it's shade, you're limited in a lot of ways. Water is, a lot of people ask me, I want a low maintenance design. So I need to know that. You want a low maintenance design, then we need shrubs that are going to grow naturally to the size that you want them to be. If you want a manicured yard and a landscape company or yourself pruning them twice a year, then there's tons of options. It might grow 7 foot, but we can keep it at 4 foot because we want that plant in that spot. So that's some of the variables to it in regards to plant selection. Drainage is huge. What type of issues could you have when we get those 1,000-year rains that happen every 4 years? So it seems to, at least in our industry, we have a lot of heavy rains in January around the upstate of South Carolina, and that's good for business. But I want to fix that first. That's always your first approach. What sunlight, of course, for what type of plants you can choose. But it doesn't matter if you put the right plant in the right place if the drainage is going to be an issue. So drainage is one of the first things you always need to look at. If you're on a good flat level surface, is it too flat? Are you going to have standing water problems? Do we need a French drain? Do we need a dry creek bed to divert some water? Do you have a natural spring in your yard? There's all of these situations can arise when you're developing or planning a design. How much water do you need? Is it an irrigation? Is it a drip system? A lot of times plants don't like overhead irrigation. Lawns, when you're watering your grass, that's the way you do it. It's just overhead. When it comes to shrubs, a lot of times drip line is a better way to go about it. And you can pinpoint where the water is released as opposed to it spraying the whole bed. Then you're watering bushes and weeds. But if you've got a drip line and you're putting it right around the plants and you're putting emitters exactly where you want your plants to get watered, you're saving water that way. And that's a good way to water, ideally, especially shrubs and trees and gardens, is a drip line. I'm getting more and more into homesteading and having plants that grow that I can eat. So that's something that's new to me. I have been gardening and farming for about 4 or 5 years now. Landscaping, 25 years. Landscaping and gardening is very different. But throw a blueberry bush, throw a rosemary, throw an apple tree, or 3, because a lot of those, they need the male and the female. A lot of those, they need to pollinate each other. So you can't just put one peach tree in the yard and expect to get peaches. But there's sections, depending on the size and your sunlight and all these other variables that I've mentioned, there's sections that you can ornamentally put a plant or tree that blooms and is pretty and has nice foliage. And it's an accent that certain times a year, if you treat it right and you water it right and you fertilize it right and you prune it right, you can eat from it. That's an amazing thing, just to walk up to a tree and grab a plum. That was my reality 2 weeks ago. For a whole month before that, my plums were ready, and it was just so nice to walk up to them and just grab a plum off the tree. Apples right now are growing. They still have a few months to go. We're right in the middle of the summer. We're in June here in the upstate of South Carolina. And blackberries right now, I have green blackberries that are ready to turn black, and blueberries just finished also. All of these plants might not be the prettiest for that specimen of that yard that you're wanting to look for, but you can eat from it. That's a huge, huge bonus. If being edible is not important to you, then we have a plethora of plants that we can choose from. Colors, nice to have native. It's hard to have just native. So sometimes you're going to mix some other things in there. But it all depends on the approach. Would you like a water feature? Do you want a patio in your design? So it's really desires. What are your preferences? What are your colors? What is your purpose? Are you wanting low maintenance and never fool with it? Or do you want your friends to come over and be like, I want to hang out there. I want to sit out there, play some music and burn a fire. That's just depends on, every design's different, so it just depends on your preference. So what do you envision when you go out back and you look at your yard out front? Are you looking for curb appeal? Because I always say the front yard's for everybody else, backyard's for me. So which side are you wanting designed? All of it are you wanting designed? And then what do you want to use it for? There's some questions you need to ask yourself instead of just asking me, how do you design? There's so many tips I can give you in regards to approaches, but it ultimately depends on what do you want? What do you want to see in your yard? What do you want?